Hey everyone, this is Jordan from Sleeklens.com, and in this video I'm going to go over your camera mode dial and go over each one of the most popular options that are on the mode dials on most DSLRs out there, and give you a kind of an example of what you would use them for and exactly what they mean. So here's a mode dial of the most common ones, and your mode dial might differ depending on what kind of camera model you have. For example, the manual mode or the shutter speed mode on here is labeled S, but on Canons it might be labeled TV. So just check your camera's manual and make sure you're looking at the right one. But these are the typical ones on here. So the first one that we're going to talk about is obviously the most popular one that a lot of new beginners use, and that is the automatic mode. Automatic is exactly what it means. It automatically sets everything for you. It's kind of like a very beginner point and shoot, and it meters the scene for you, and it selects everything for you, and you don't have to do anything. All you got to do is press the shutter button, and that's it. So that's a very, very common one that a lot of people jump into. They just set it to auto just because it's easy and takes the photo, and that's pretty simple. But you're gonna want to, if you're gonna want to learn photography and master certain lighting techniques, you will have to break out of auto at some point. So the mode that a lot of people are scared to use, I'm gonna get most of the main ones out of the way here, is the manual mode. Manual mode means you have to change everything. So you have to set the shutter speed, the ISO, and the aperture, depending on the scene that the scene that you're taking a photo of. And so the easiest way to do that is to point the camera at the scene and look at the light meter that's in your viewfinder, and you'll see that it's either going to be too dark or too light, and you'll have to adjust that accordingly. So the next mode is the shutter speed mode, or sometimes called time value mode. Shutter speed mode means that you have to select the shutter speed, and what the camera will do is once you select that shutter speed, it's going to do its best to stay at that shutter speed. So it's going to change the aperture and the ISO to make sure that you have that shutter speed. That is a really good use for sporting events. If you know the light might be changing a lot, and you know you need at least 1,000th of a second or 800th of a second, it's a really popular one to let the camera do the work for you so you can concentrate on shooting. Aperture mode is probably the one that I stay in most of the time just because I'm more used to it. And basically what you do is you set the aperture, much like the shutter speed, you set the aperture of what you want the aperture to be. So if you're taking portraits, maybe you want an aperture of f3.5 or something like that. You'll set the aperture to 3.5 or 4 or whatever, and the camera will change the ISO if you set it to auto, or it'll change the aperture or the shutter speed to make sure that you get the right exposure for that setting. P is the program mode, is what most people call the advanced point and shoot mode. Program mode basically takes your aperture and your shutter speed, and it changes it to make sure you have a very even scene. A lot of people don't really use this much, again, just because most of the time people go to auto and that's what they're familiar with. But it's kind of a good one to have there. So those are more of the advanced modes. So the ones that that a lot of people kind of stick to when they first get their camera, I'm going to run by these really quickly because a lot of people should know what they are, but they should try to not get in these modes if they're really trying to learn photography and get better at taking photos. So the little flower on most cameras usually means macro, and what it'll do is try to focus in and give you the right exposure for really close focused items. The mountains kind of hint towards a landscape scene. So typically what that does is it'll give you a larger aperture, maybe a higher, like a f8, f11, somewhere around there. And the camera will kind of give you on the rendered JPEG, it'll kind of increase the blues and the greens so that your colors look a little more saturated. Next one is the night portrait mode, and what that'll do is it'll go ahead and give you a lower aperture, higher ISO, and will also pop the flash so that you can get a really nice portrait. Again, these are all automatic modes. You don't have to set anything at all. These are really beginner modes. So that's what you would do for night portraits. Then you have the regular portrait mode. What that will typically do is give you a very low aperture so you can get a more bokeh background, a more blurry background. And then one of the last modes here is the running man mode, or what a lot of people call the sports mode. And what that does is try to give you a higher ISO and a higher shutter speed so that you can capture capture motion easier and freeze motion. So those are the main points of the camera DSLR mode dial. Some other higher end cameras have what might be called a custom mode, like a C1 or C2. And what that allows you to do is set the settings yourself and program those custom modes for you. So that way, if you know you're going to need higher ISO or higher shutter speed, stuff like that, you can set those individually for yourself, and the camera will automatically change to those once you set it to the custom mode. So those are the most popular ones. Hope you enjoyed that quick explanation of your DSLR mode dial. Thank you for joining me in this video. This is Jordan from Sleeklens.com, and I'll see you in the next one.